Dear friends, it's a great privilege and honor for me to introduce tonight's speaker, Professor Denis Singh. I tried to download his profile. It's like, I think, 20, 30 pages. So I'm not going to read everything. Professor Denis Singh is Chancellor here, Mangalam University. Is also an Indian professor of mathematics. He served as the 21st Vice Chancellor of the University of Delhi. He is a distinguished Fellow of Hackspace at Imperial College London and has been an adjunct professor of mathematics at the University of Houston. For his services to the nation, he was conferred with the Padma Shri, which is the fourth highest civilian award awarded by the Republic of India. Then, as I said, the list is really long. I mean, under the title honors, there were so many. But I just want to tell you his many achievements. Then under the title of academic credentials, another very long list. Then leadership positions, another long list. It's really amazing, what you can achieve in one lifetime. And he is also listed under the invited prestigious lecturers and so many places. Then thinker, policymaker, and implementer. And especially the one thing that's really interesting is how much innovations and changes that he brought of when he was the Vice Chancellor at the Delhi University. I had the great privilege of meeting Professor when we were invited to Bhutan for a meeting on making some education policy. So at that time, I had also the privilege of meeting all his family. And at that time, I requested him to kindly accept to be the governing body member of Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, which he readily agreed. Not only that, I could clearly see how much, respect that he has for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So I thank you for coming here to deliver this talk and for being a friend of Tibetan people. And this morning we had the privilege, very special privilege of seeing His Holiness Dalai Lama and getting his blessing. So without standing in between you and Professor, I would like you to kindly speak.
Venerable Geshe, my deep gratitude for the honor you have accorded me by connecting me to His Holiness, to things that are Tibetan, to a great culture, to great knowledge and wisdom. Every time I meet Geshe, I become a little wiser, and I'm indebted to you, sir, for that. His Holiness blesses me and my family, and I could not ask for better fortune. So for me, this is a pilgrimage, and I come here as a pilgrim. I'm not here to teach anything. I'm here to share some of my experiences, some of which may also resonate with you. And I speak because I sincerely want that this great culture that you represent, this great civilization that you represent, finds its place the way it should in the world of today. And I'm happy to see so many young faces here, because it will be on your shoulders that the responsibility will lie to carry forward this tradition, these ideas, this wisdom. I deliberately chose the title of my talk as discussing how knowledge and economic well-being have gone together in the history of mankind. And I see here knowledge. Whenever I come here, I see knowledge, I see wisdom, I see spiritualism. But forgive me for saying this may sound a little crude. I say this with humility and concern. I don't see the accompanying economic well being. And it isn't peculiar to your culture, your civilization. It is happening in some parts of India also. One of the indicators of this lack of economic well being, or as much as it should be, is when young people leave their traditional moorings and go away. It is happening to young Indians. It is happening to young people from Tibet. In some ways, I don't mind it. The world is now becoming more and more unified. But you know, there was a spiritual poet in India who, amongst other things, said a very nice verse, which roughly translated says that just as a bird that is on a long journey with a ship travels with the ship in the oceans, flies away, but comes back repeatedly to rest, to replenish, to re energize. And I would like that even when our young go, they must stay connected, they must re energize themselves, and they must also pay off the debts that they have inherited as part of a culture and a civilization. So I speak in that context. And all I'm trying to tell you is what I have learned from people who have been far greater than I will ever be, whose wisdom has shown the light to so many. And I will try and see if I can pass on some of that to you. And I will use a little bit of history at my... I'm not a historian by any stretch of imagination. But I have seen something from history that allows me to make these conclusions, to make these inferences. And so I go back in time to the time of Pliny, the Roman historian. This is a few hundred years before the time of Jesus Christ. Pliny's writings survive till today. They are on record. And you know, he writes, he laments, he is concerned that Roman gold is going away to India. That Roman wealth is being transferred to India in exchange for what? In exchange for products that come from India which no other part of the world can make. That is why they are compelled to buy them from India. So Indian merchant ships and Indian merchants on the land route travel all the way to these lands via the Arab world, and they indulge in trade. And what is it that they were selling, and why is it that they could travel so far without trouble? Those days, if you use the sea route, it was not easy. The reason why they could sell these unique products and the reason why they could travel without any mistakes, not losing their way, was because in India they had mastered the art of putting knowledge to economic use. And I'll tell you how. So, if you have to travel by the sea route, even today, it takes some effort. You have modern navigational instruments, and still sometimes you hear that ships get lost or they get wrecked in a storm because they could not anticipate a storm. You can imagine how much more difficult it must have been before the time of the Christ. And in spite of that, Indian ships used to manage to cross the Indian Ocean, go all the way to Africa. And you can ask me, it is your right as young thinking individuals, on what basis do I say this? Am I just a chauvinist who likes to talk about things Indian that were great? Or do I have some historical basis? And I can tell you, if you are patient, that there is enormous historical evidence. I will give you one or two. I gave you that Pliny's writings are available to us. I will give you two or three more. Very few people know, and I'm sure all of you here in school, and I'm sure even Geshe, who doesn't like mathematics, Geshe confessed to me that he didn't like mathematics. I'm a mathematician, by the way. So Geshe told me frankly, I don't like mathematics, but fortunately he did not say I don't like mathematicians. So I'm lucky. But if you have studied mathematics in school, then you must have heard of the Theorem of Pythagoras. What very few people know is that this theorem was discovered in India hundreds of years before Pythagoras and is recorded in historical texts known as the Shulba Sutras. Shulba Sutra simply means Shulb is a piece of cord or string and Sutra is a formula or an aphorism. Even today, if you go to any construction site, you will find that the mason who is laying the brickwork uses a piece of cord with a dead weight attached to it to make all his measurements. The Shulba Sutra is connected with just that dead weight on a string and the measurements that go with it. And there are many Shulba Sutras. About 12 of them survive till today. Some are lost, but you know they existed because the existing Shulba Sutras also talk of them. Leave all that aside. In these Shulba Sutras, they are mathematical documents used for architecture. Now think, hundreds of years before Jesus Christ, mathematics was being used for architecture in India. And in the course of this architectural construction, they discovered, amongst other things, the Theorem of Pythagoras with a proof. All those Shulba Sutras are recorded and available in the library of the Indian National Science Academy. If you ever go to Delhi, and if you have the time and curiosity, you can verify them. Otherwise, there are books of the Indian National Science Academy that are available otherwise. Leave all that aside. Pythagoras, it is on record, his own disciple Opelius writes that his master went to India. He writes that. He went to India to learn on the banks of the Ganga from the scholars. And he became heavily influenced by Jain philosophy, became a vegetarian, stopped wearing leather garments, leather footwear, and would eat his dinner before sundown. All this is recorded by Opelius, his own disciple. This is hundreds of years ago. Why would Pythagoras come to India? Why would Pliny write about all this, that India takes away our gold? Because India was the fountainhead of knowledge, but in action. You can have knowledge and don't use it for anything, or you can have knowledge which goes into action. The Indian tradition was very strong in putting knowledge to use. Now let me tell you, because of the mathematics that we had developed, we had mastered the art of navigation on sea. We invented a mathematical instrument called the Rappelgai. And that Rappelgai was in use in India much, much before Vasco da Gama and the others. Around the time of Jesus Christ, there is a tiny island near Africa called Socotra. On that island, there are very long, deep caves. It has been discovered about 10 years ago that these caves, on their walls, are writings by Indian sailors in the Brahmi script. These writings are dated back to the time of Jesus Christ. Think, These are sailors from India crossing the Indian Ocean, stopping at that island. It is so tiny that even today it is not easy to locate. And they could stop there with accuracy and write their story. We come from Sindh, we come from Gujarat, we come from Cochin, and they write their story on the walls, and those stories are available till today. Socotra. Actually, its name was Sukhadra Dweep, the island that gives you happiness, but it got distorted over time and came to be called Socotra. How did they navigate? Because they were using knowledge, mathematical knowledge, to build an instrument for navigation that allowed ships to determine position at sea. What was Europe doing? Forget the time of Christ. Newton declares to the British Parliament, these are hundreds of years later, 17th century, 18th century. He tells the British Parliament that as of now, science knows no means of determining position at sea. This great scientist accepts defeat, unaware that in India they had developed the knowledge system to find position at sea. And what were they doing? Putting that knowledge to use for trading purposes. Indian architecture and shipbuilding was so advanced, you will find much written in our ancient documents which survive till today, that our ships, one, they would never get lost because they could navigate. European merchant ships used to most of the time get lost. You never knew whether they'll make it back or not. That is why India was so good at trading. The second thing is that we built strong ships, so even if they encountered storms, this is again written by Pliny and others, that Indian ships are far better built. So what was it? Shipbuilding knowledge. Okay, I can have that knowledge, I can teach it on the board, and then I can go to sleep, or I can do that so that my ships travel faster, accurately, and can do more trade, economic well-being. This is called putting knowledge to use. And time and again, India does that. Time and again. India invented a steel called the Woods steel. You know, when Alexander came to India, he had a little bit of success right in the frontiers of India. He almost lost to the Indian Puru king, Porus as they call him, but managed to beat him. But he did not cross the Beas River. He stopped at the edge of the Beas River. Western historians write, and that is their habit, I don't blame them. Each person wants to extol his own culture, his own civilization, that his soldiers were tired, they'd had enough, they wanted to go back. Indian historical accounts tell us that when his army reached the Beas River, his spies crossed the river and they encountered the powerful, undefeated Magadhan army. The Magadhan Empire was at its peak then. It ruled over thousands of square kilometers of territory. And they came back and told Alexander two things: that there are thousands of elephants, thousands of cavalry, and thousands of foot soldiers waiting eagerly to give you battle. That's when he turned back. That's not the real story that I want to tell you. When he turned back, as history records on our side, he was a little unhappy, a little demoralized. On his way back, he again stopped and conferred with Porus. Porus had become a friend by then. And Alexander was cheered by Porus because Porus gave him several ingots of what is called the Woods steel. This was the steel that no other part of the world could manufacture. If you have studied a little bit of history, you will know of the Damascus sword, the Damascene talwar as they say. That Damascus sword had nothing to do with Damascus except that the steel used to come from India, and in the fires of the smithies there, they would give it the shape of a sword. That's all. The steel was Indian. The wood steel, that steel was perfect for swords. All swords, if they could be made with the wood steel, would stand better in battle than any other steel. And India was exporting this steel to so many parts of the world, east and west both. and getting gold in return. Again, why? Because we had mastered the knowledge of this special steel. This steel dominated steel exports for centuries. You must have heard of the great scientist Michael Faraday. Faraday in the 18th century and early 19th, if I'm not mistaken, tries to find out how he could make wood steel but did not succeed. We have now lost the art. No one really knows exactly how it was made, but steel making has advanced in many other ways, and you get very good steel now by other means from the West. But for centuries, the wood steel, the knowledge we had, we put it to economic use, we exported it and brought wealth back. Why am I telling you this? Not because I want to tell you that India was great. That's not my point. I am just illustrating to you in this brief talk that knowledge can be put to economic well-being. You must harness knowledge, and the Indian tradition has always been strong. Our ancient school of philosophy, called the Mimamsa school of philosophy, says categorically knowledge without action is meaningless. You have to put knowledge to action. Unfortunately, India itself seems to have largely forgotten this tradition, but the West has mastered this beautifully. And I will give you, in the remaining time at my disposal, a little bit of illustrations on this count. The little knowledge that we have when we teach in our engineering institutions and other colleges, our students become fairly good at coding. That requires some knowledge. This is not very deep knowledge. It's more practice, more the ability to read some written instructions that come from a knowledge person called an algorithm creator, and then you translate that into computer code. But all these companies in India, the IT companies, Infosys, Wipro, and I forget the other name, TCS, they make billions of dollars each year because they are able to train through our colleges young minds that can write code without having to pay heavy salaries, because salaries are a little low in India. And India gets huge benefit because these are billions of dollars that come each year. Basic knowledge. You go to a college, engineering college, IIT or otherwise, while you are studying whatever you are studying, on the side, each IIT student learns coding, then he gets a job in one of these companies, and they pay him by Indian standards a good salary, not so good by Western standards, but he's happy because he gets a good salary. And then we export this knowledge. Now I want to tell you another story. Just contrast it with something else. Real knowledge. I'm sure each one of you has heard of the company Google. And each one of you uses Google all the time. I personally benefit greatly in my mathematical research because of Google. It has reduced efforts that I had to make otherwise. So Gmail and Google have allowed me to increase my mathematical productivity like anything. While waiting at the airport in Delhi, I used my cell phone because I had some time at my disposal, and I accessed a research paper that I'm writing with a collaborator, one in America, one in Canada, and me here. This is at the airport with just this device, just this. And I make my observations, I access that paper, I have to look up another paper, I access that through Google, make more observations, and quickly email it to my collaborators. This is at the airport, unheard of 15, 20 years ago, when I was finding it so difficult to collaborate, and I had to consistently keep traveling to the USA to sit with my collaborators to do research. That's the power of Google. I want you to know two things, because there are so many young here. I want you to think about this. That Google is also an IT company like Infosys, TCS, Wipro, and I respect all of them. I just decided randomly once to check how much money does Google earn. In what Google made, I checked that one particular financial year, 1 quarter, 3 months. What Google made in 3 months, all the Indian IT companies put together did not make in a whole year. Do you see the difference? All these IT companies, you look at the shares in the Indian market, they're thousands of rupees, almost impossible for ordinary people to buy. But they're nothing compared to what Google makes. Why? Because these companies aren't really putting knowledge to use. Google uses mathematical knowledge of the undergraduate level. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Why don't we do this in India? Why don't you do this, Geshe? Why don't we do it in other parts of this world? Because we still don't want to put knowledge to use. Look at how we teach. What do we do? How did I learn mathematics? I had to go to a class. The teacher would come. There were 5 teachers. If 3 of them hadn't taught me in those 3 years, I would have been a better mathematician. Think about this. I'm not running them down. But they did more harm than good because they just didn't know how to teach. They didn't know why we should learn this. They would come right on the board. We were asked to take notes so that we could write the exam without thinking and go away. And what use is that? Why would I do this? And everyone in my class was taught like each one of them will have to become a professional mathematician. But I was the only one who became a mathematician because I was the only one who really wanted to be a mathematician. The others were doing maths because they were okay in school, wanted a college degree, but after 3 years they used to say, what will we do with this? There's nothing that we can do with this. And if you think it is only because of maths, we do this in India with all subjects. We do this with medicine, we do this with Hindi literature, with English literature, with geography, with commerce. I met a young man in Sydney. I was then Vice Chancellor. I took a taxi and he was driving the taxi, an Indian from Delhi. I just got talking. He didn't know who I was. I asked him, what is it? Where have you come from? He said, I studied. He had no idea, but what a coincidence. He had studied at one of our most prestigious colleges of Delhi University. He took a BCom honors degree. And then he said he migrated to Australia because he said, I felt I could conquer the world. I have a first-class BCom honors degree from a college at Delhi University, which always makes the headlines because of its 100% cutoff. I will not name the college. And I said, why are you driving a taxi? He started weeping. He said, sir, I came here thinking I will conquer the world. After coming here, I've learned that I know nothing. That no thing that I know is of practical use. So I have to relearn, re-educate, and to pay the fees, I drive a taxi. And then he said, they are cheating us by doing this to us in our colleges. And he begged when I told him, I'm so glad you've told me this, I'm the Vice Chancellor. He begged that do something and change this. What I didn't tell him was I had already begun the process of change. What is it that I want you to think about? And I want that you sit, and I'm using a crude term. You sit on what is a rough diamond. But the diamond needs to be polished. The Tibetan tradition of medicine is strong. But 90% of Indians don't know about it. Forget the rest of the world. It's a niche thing. I just don't, and I'm not criticizing Geshe in all humility. I say this because I want the young to wake up. You don't have to be a doctor. If you are adept at any kind of marketing, if you are adept at hotel management, and I'm giving you one example, not because I know all this, it's just that I've seen others take advantage. Go to Kerala, go to Karnataka. Look how they market Ayurveda through health spas. This is transdisciplinary. It doesn't require only Ayurvedic knowledge. You have to have good marketing strategies. You have to have good hotel management strategies. And of course, you need good Ayurvedic practical use. And between the three, they are earning millions of dollars every year in Kerala just through that. Why is Tibet not doing it here in Dharamshala? Why are your students not learning this kind of practical knowledge? Why don't we have a transdisciplinary undergraduate degree? You don't have to be a Tibetan doctor. You already have enough good doctors. But there is so much unique. I just went to consult someone today and she felt my pulse, did ask me a question and told me what she thought was wrong with me, which was accurate. Now, in Kerala, I know people who go from America, from England, from Africa, from Europe for treatment. And why don't they come here? There is so much that we could be doing here. And I have given you one instance. For that, you need a core knowledge action system. And let me illustrate. This is the final part of my talk. You know, Stanford University is where Google came from. Who were these people? They were undergraduates at Stanford University who dropped out. They didn't even complete their degree. They had studied undergraduate mathematics and they had studied coding. But Stanford has a powerful culture of knowledge connected to the economy. What is that culture? Startups. Google alone makes so much money, it is located very near Stanford. But let me tell you, in 2012, there is a serious study made by deep economic and financial experts of Stanford's ecosystem financial. So around the campus, if you have ever been to Stanford, or even if you don't, you can read about it. Around the physical, geographical location of Stanford University, there is a ecosystem of startups. Google is one of them. In 2012, do you know what was the total economic might of all those startups combined? $3 trillion. Think carefully. Just one university. $3 trillion in 2012. The Indian economy is not yet $3 trillion for all of India. This is one university. You go to MIT, same story. Do you know what is the total strength of the US economy? $300 trillion. Just think. Why? Because Stanford, MIT, Harvard, and if you think only the Ivy League universities, let me tell you, I hold an adjunct professorship at the University of Houston. I've held it for 25 years. I can't even remember for how long. It gives me the freedom to come and go as I please, do what I like, teach a course, do some research, so on and so forth. So I'm very familiar with the University of Houston. It is what is called a state-funded university. So the government of Texas funds the university. Because the government funds the university, its undergraduate programs are mandated to admit anyone who applies. You cannot reject. Everyone has to be admitted. And therefore, you would think, my God, they admit all these people who may or may not be good at studies, but they put them there. And so they may be just like those bad universities that you hear about in other parts of the world. That's not true. Last year, I did an estimate with scholars who know this business. Houston, the University of Houston contributed $6 billion in 1 year to the economy of Houston City. Just one public funded university. How? So they are putting knowledge to use for economic purposes. I'll give you one example. When I visited the medical center here today, the Tibetan center, they kept telling me that they are very good with cancer treatment, very good with cancer treatment. Because cancer is a scourge and the world needs to find ways to get relief. At the University of Houston, a student whom I trained in mathematics, who taught himself coding, is, do you know what? A leading cancer researcher. Now you can ask, maths, coding, and cancer, how do they go together? That's what I mean. That's why I said for spas, you need good marketing, hotel management, you need good doctors, and you need a good architect to design it well. Mix your disciplines. Your knowledge systems must learn to mix. India must learn to mix. You must learn to mix. And this culture of entrepreneurship connected to knowledge must start. And you don't have to start by saying, I will set up a multi-million-dollar Google. No. 9 out of 10 will fail in the first instance. It's never a final failure. That failure will make you better. And then you will attempt again and do better. And as you do that, even systems here will become better at giving you more support. And if you start giving benefit to society, why will people not want it? Why will even the government of India not welcome it? Because it will bring revenue to India also. You're not fighting anyone. You're not propagating some propaganda that will destroy any culture. You're just adding in the Buddhist way. Ashoka was a Buddhist. I don't think you could have a more practical Buddhist and a greater Buddhist in practice terms than Ashoka, emperor. But look at how well he managed the economy. Read the economic strength that Ashoka had developed after he became so much a Buddhist. Spiritualism, Mahatma Gandhi's, do you know who was Mahatma Gandhi's spiritual guide? You will be stunned. He was a successful diamond merchant of Surat. Think about this. They don't have to be separate. Your heart must be clean and everything else will follow. Gandhi was such a successful lawyer because he was clean-hearted and honest. He minted money in an honest way. And he put the money to good use. Who is stopping you? You want to help the world? Make honest money and help the world. You will feel better and you will realize money is not important for you. Maybe now you don't know it. Time will come when you will realize, how does it matter? Just give it away for benefit of mankind. Mahatma Gandhi's spiritual guru was a successful diamond merchant of Surat. And the man whom he called his fifth son, he had 4 sons, the fifth one was one of India's most successful industrialists. This is Gandhi, who was so spiritual, His Holiness, whenever he gives a lecture, will always refer to Gandhi. Just think about this. And that is why I come here today. That the time has come to create a structured way in a gentle, non-disruptive fashion, step by step, organically, to create a knowledge-based ecosystem for the welfare of society. And you are already a rough diamond. I gave you one instance. I can already, as a layperson, think of other ways. This is not the forum. This is not the time. I want the young minds to think about this. And God willing, something good will come out of this in the days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for this amazing talk. I once read, you judge yourself by what you think you can do. People judge you what you have done. So unless you do something concrete and make it manifest and show it relevant in our day-to-day life, your knowledge becomes useless. Somewhere else I read that it's very important to have information. For example, to build a ship, you need all the information how to build a ship. You might read many books, but that's not enough. Especially in today's world, much of the information is junk information. So you need to get the right information. Then the second thing that's important is from that information you need to get knowledge. Knowledge is not just knowing a little bit about how to build a ship, but actually being able to build a ship. So therefore, Professor was saying knowledge is so important. According to that statement, there is one more which is really, really important. That is wisdom, which is unfortunately very much lacking in today's world. Because having built the ship, whether you are going to use it to deliver people across the ocean or use it to carry ballistic missiles and nuclear bombs to drop on others. So wisdom has really become a very scarce commodity today. In Buddhism, we talk about the process of gaining knowledge through listening, through contemplation, through meditation. And through that, then you may be able to express yourself in a beneficial way. Some years back, I attended a conference in Bangalore. It was the Sai Baba's international conference. They invited me, I was there. So there one speaker spoke about the importance of 3H in our life: head, heart, and hand. So normally we talk about head, not so much heart, mostly head. Education means literacy, reading, writing, mathematics, and then after that you get a job. That's the end of the story. So therefore His Holiness is really emphasizing, no, knowledge, head alone is not enough. You must have heart. Now in addition to that, as you were saying, hand. We are talking about something that we all have, but we hardly use. So therefore, thank you for this very enlightening talk. And especially for us Tibetans, because of our very precarious situation. In every field, we need to have knowledge that helps us execute whatever we want to do, whatever we want to achieve. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Geshe, I'll come down.
These books don't have any mathematical calculations.
Thank you, Geshe.